What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the tower. So today I'm going to be going over all the workshop upgrades. It's mostly just going to be like info about like how they work. Yeah, there's a lot of like unknown mechanics about them. I'm going to try to cover a lot of them. Yeah, I think a lot of the upgrades will be pretty simple. And yeah, let's just get into it. So starting off in the attack section, we have damage, which is probably one of the most simple upgrades. As the description says, it just increases the damage that your projectiles deal. But it also increases ultimate weapon damage, which is true for a few of the other upgrades, which is what makes it really good. And next up, we have attack speed, which is just the rate that your projectiles are fired. I'm not sure if this math is still accurate, but I think at least like a year ago, your attack speed was bullets per second divided by 2. So if you were at like 40 attack speed, you'd be shooting 20 bullets a second. I'm not sure if that's still accurate, but I assume it would be. Yeah, it seems like a lot of the upgrades in the game have just like arbitrary numbers that don't really like correlate to anything like that. So it's kind of hard to like figure out the exact like speed or rate that something's happening like this. And next up we have critical chance, which just gives your projectiles a chance to crit based on your critical factor. This one also affects ultimate weapon damage, which is very nice. I think it goes to like 80 at a base, but you can get over 100 with like all the extra upgrades in the game. And next is critical factor, which, like I said, it's the multiplier of your critical hits from your projectiles. And this one also does affect ultimate weapon damage as well, which is very important. Next up, we have the attack range, which is just the range of your tower, the limit it can shoot projectiles. This one's also pretty simple. Attack range is like pretty important for like strategies you're running, but it is not too hard of a stat to understand, since I think the number does scale correctly now. It used to not scale correctly at all. But I think stuff with like a range does scale correctly and does visually make sense now. Then we have damage meter, which does tie in pretty well with the range. So it increases your damage for every meter that the enemies are away from the tower. So yeah, if the farther away the enemies are, the more damage you'll deal, depending on your damage meter. And this will usually only affect projectiles, except with Spotlight Plus. It will also be affected by a portion of your damage meter with that upgrade. Next up we have Multishot Chance. So this is the chance to shoot extra projectiles when you hit an enemy with one. Unlike your base projectiles, target priority doesn't actually work for multi-shot or any of the other projectile upgrades. So it's pretty much just random. So it's just going to randomly shoot any other enemies that are in your range. And going with multi-shot chance, we have multi-shot targets, which is just the maximum number of enemies that the multi-shot could shoot. If there are not enough enemies for your multi-shot targets in your range, it will just shoot all the enemies. And if there are too many, it will just shoot the maximum number of enemies it can. Next up, we have rapid fire chance, which gives your projectiles a chance to allow you to shoot 4 times faster for a certain duration. The chance part of the rapid fire is pretty simple since it's just a chance. And then we also have rapid fire duration, which is the duration of the rapid fire, the 4 times extra bullets. It may seem like this doesn't really matter since you can just keep activating it and you'll just have the permanent 4 times bullets. But you can't actually trigger it again while it's active. So you're going to have to activate the rapid fire chance again once your rapid fire actually ends. Moving on to bounce shot, we have bounce shot chance, which is just the chance of a projectile bouncing to another enemy. It's based on the chance every bounce, not for the entire bounce chain. So you can easily lose it after like 2 or 3. But yeah, you can consistently get to 4 or 5. It goes to almost a 70% chance at base, which is not bad at all. And then we also have bounce shot targets, which is the maximum number that the bounce shot can bounce between enemies. It's not going to matter too often. It's sort of a low chance to get all these bounces. At the base, the max is 8. But if you do increase that, it will help a little bit maybe. It's just a lot lower chance, a lot less projectiles are bouncing that much. And then lastly, with the bounce shot, we have the bounce shot range, which is just the range that the projectiles can bounce between enemies. Would definitely help with consistency of the bounce shot, but doesn't really affect like chance or targets in any other way. And next up we have super crit chance, which is sort of another like critical chance and critical factor. If you do get a crit, it's a chance just to get a super crit, which is just the same thing but applies an extra multiplier, depending on your super crit multiplier. This one and the super crit multiplier do also affect ultimate weapon damage. And yeah, on super crit mult, not really much to say. It's just the same thing as critical factor, but for the super crits, just an extra multiplier for damage if you do roll the super crit. And yeah, affecting ultimate weapon damage as well. And lastly, in the attack category, we have the Rend Armor stats, which is probably the most complicated one to understand. So every time a projectile hits an enemy, you have the chance, the Rend Armor chance, applying a multiplier to them, a damage multiplier for projectiles. So it will take whatever your chance is, and each time you do roll that chance, it will increase the Rend Armor on the enemy by your Rend Armor multiplier. And it can stack up to a maximum. The base maximum is 8, but you can increase that with labs and enhancements as well by a lot. If you had a maximum of 8 Rend Armor max, and you do hit that cap, then the enemy pretty much just has an 8x damage multiplier from projectiles on them. And moving on to the Rend Armor multiplier, I kind of already talked about it, but it does also show your maximum rend that the enemies can stack to. So if your Rend Armor chance is like 50% and your multiplier was 1x, every projectile that hits an enemy has a 50% chance to add 1x to their Rend Armor stack that they have on them. Each enemy has their own Rend stack. And yeah, it can just increase up to the maximum that you see here. The max Rend Armor sub doesn't actually show in this little menu on the Rend Armor Mult. But if you do have it, it does work according to what other people have said. I don't have it myself, so I can't say. Rend Armor will usually only affect projectile damage, but with the Poison Swamp Rend Lab, it can also affect Poison Swamp damage. Moving on to the defense category, we have health, which is just the maximum health of your tower. Pretty simple, but whenever you take damage, your health will be reduced by the enemy damage. And yeah, when that hits 0, you die. Health regen, also pretty simple. Your tower just regenerates a part of its health every second. So if your health regen was like 15, then your tower would regenerate 15 health a second, which is based off in-game time. So it will look a lot higher, like on higher game speeds. Next we have defense percent, which just decreases the percent of damage that you take. So if you were to take 100 damage, but you have like 90% defense, you'd only take 10 damage. And then yeah, like it says here, it applies before defense absolute. And yeah, speaking of defense absolute, this is similar to defense percent by decreasing the amount of damage you take, but instead of a percentage, it's just a base number. Whatever number you see on the defense absolute, you will just take that much less damage every hit. This one's also pretty similar, it's just a base decrease of damage that you take. Moving on to Thorns damage. Whenever you get hit by an enemy, they will take a percent of their health. So the base max is 99%, so if they hit you, they will take 99% of their health as damage to themselves. The 50% damage to bosses though, like it says here. If you do have the wall Thorns lab is also based on your Thorns damage, which I think not everybody knows. The max of that lab is 20%. So it's not just 20% of the enemy's health, it's 20% of your Thorns. Since the Thorns is usually around 100 at max, it looks pretty similar. But yeah, it's actually based on your Thorns instead of just being 20%. Next we have Lifesteal, which heals your tower by a percent of the damage you deal on hit. It only works for projectiles, but you can usually get your health back pretty fast if you have a lot of projectiles. Unfortunately, it only works for your base tower health. It doesn't work for like packages or the wall or anything like that. Next up, we have the Knockback Upgrades, which is just a chance for your projectiles to knock enemies back. And knockback forces like the amount they're knocked back each time they are. This one might also be one of those arbitrary numbers that doesn't really make sense. Could be like meters, like kind of based on your range. But yeah, I'm not really sure on that. All you need to know pretty much is that the higher knockback force, the more the enemies will be knocked back when they do get knocked back. Moving on to the Orb Upgrades. So orbs will instantly kill most regular enemies, everything except protectors, bosses, and elites. And yeah, the orb speed is just how fast they rotate around your tower. Not really sure where this number comes from either. Just the larger the number, the faster they will rotate. And then the orb is just the number of orbs that you have rotating around your tower. Next we have the Shockwave Upgrades. So every once in a while, a Shockwave will push back all the regular enemies away from your tower. The Shockwave size is just how far the enemies are pushed back. Once again, this is one of those numbers where I'm not really sure what the size is, like the exact distance. One of those arbitrary numbers. But yeah, the larger the number, the farther the enemies will be pushed back. Protectors are also pushed back like this, unlike how it works with the orbs. So everything except bosses and elites can be pushed back. Shockwave frequency, just how often the shockwave happens. Sort of like an ultimate weapon cooldown or something. But the thing here is that the shockwave has to fully disappear before the cooldown starts again. So if it has like a 10-second frequency, then the shockwave has to fully disappear before that 10-second timer starts counting down again. Moving on to the landmine upgrades. So yeah, whenever you kill an enemy, enemies have a chance to drop a landmine, which can do multiple different things depending on what other upgrades you have. But at base, they just have a certain blast radius and they just deal damage to enemies. So yeah, these upgrades are pretty simple. Landmine chance is just the chance of each enemy dropping a landmine. Landmine damage is just how much the landmines actually deal. Similar to ultimate weapons, it also does include your crits to factor it in as its damage. And then landmine radius is just how big the explosion is. I'm not quite sure what that number is based on either. Next up, we have Defy, which is just a chance to not take damage if you were to die from a hit. Pretty simple, just pretty much a chance to survive if you would have died. Moving on to the wall upgrades. So the wall just sits outside your tower. It has a certain amount of health, and if it breaks, it has a certain amount of rebuild time that it takes to come back. So yeah, the wall health stat is just based on your main tower health, and is a percent of your tower health, as you can see here. And then your wall rebuild is the time it takes to come back after it breaks. There's tons of labs and modules to buff it, but yeah, pretty simple at its base. Moving on to the utility section, we have cash bonus, which multiplies the amount of cash that enemies drop when you kill them. And it also does, in fact, the wave bonus. That's also a pretty simple one. And then we have cash a wave, which you just gain a certain amount of cash after every wave. Coins a kill bonus is similar to cash bonus, but it affects coins instead of cash. Just multiplying the amount of coins that each enemy drops. Then we also have coins a wave, similar to cash a wave, which is the same thing. It just gives you a certain amount of coins after you complete a wave. But this one is not affected by the coins a kill, unlike the cash bonus. Next we have the free upgrades. So there's a free attack upgrade, a free defense upgrade, and a free utility upgrade. After every wave is completed, there's a chance that these will upgrade a random upgrade in each category. So if you have like a free attack upgrade of 50%, there's a 50% chance that a random upgrade in the attack category will be upgraded. And then same thing for the other two. Free defense upgrade will upgrade something in the defense category, and then free utility upgrade will upgrade something in the utility category. Free utility upgrade also can upgrade itself. So if you do upgrade that once, it will upgrade itself and the other free upgrades. Next up, we have interest a wave, which increases how much interest you gain at the end of each wave, depending on how much cash you have. So if you have 100 cash and your interest a wave is 10%, you will gain 10 extra cash at the end of the wave. There is a maximum, as you can see, and the maximum can be upgraded to, I think, 15,000 max in the lab. Next up, we have the package upgrades. So at the end of every wave, there's a chance that you get a package that will give you a certain amount of health back. And it can do a few other things if you have some labs or cards. So the recovery amount is how much you will actually recover. And this can go over 100% because of the next upgrade, which is max recovery, which allows packages to heal you beyond your max health. So if you have a max recovery of like 10 times, it'll pretty much just give you 10 times the health overall when you're at max packages. And a recovery amount of like 150 would heal 150% of your max health, which would go into your max extra health from your max recovery. And yeah, package chance is pretty simple, just the chance that you'll get a package after every wave. There's also a lab called package after boss, which guarantees that you'll get a package after every boss. And lastly, in the utility category, we have the enemy level skips. So there's one for the enemy attack and one for the enemy health. Even though this description does say it's a chance to skip an enemy level, it's not actually a chance anymore, and you will skip the same amount of levels by the end, as long as you upgrade it the same amount. So if you have your enemy attack level skip at like 10% for the whole run, then it will skip exactly 10% of the enemy attack levels throughout the whole run. These are super nice since they can just increase your waves, just base pretty much. There's not really too many factors that will affect this otherwise. And yeah, enemy health level skips the same thing, but just affects the enemy health instead of the enemy attack. And I'm also going to cover the workshop enhancements since they're pretty similar. You can unlock these in tier 12 at wave 60 from the milestones. You do have to research a lab, but a lot of these are pretty simple as well. So we have the damage plus, which just multiplies the damage in the regular workshop by an amount. And then we have the Rend Armor plus, which does affect all three of the Rend Armor stats, the Rend Armor chance, the Rend Armor multiplier, and the max Rend that can stack on enemies. It is half effective on chance, as it says here, but if you have enough projectiles, it's pretty easy to max it anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. Critical factor plus, same thing as damage pretty much, just multiplies your critical factor by a certain amount. Same thing with damage meter plus, just multiplies your damage meter. Super crit mult plus, just multiplies your super crit mult by a percent as well. And yeah, attack speed plus does the same thing, just multiplies your attack speed by a certain amount. And then moving on to the defense enhancements, we have the health plus, which multiplies your maximum tower health by a certain amount. Health regen plus is the same thing, just multiplies your health regen by a certain amount. Defense absolute plus also multiplies your defense absolute by a certain amount. Landmine damage plus multiplies your landmine damage by a certain amount. The numbers on this one are pretty big compared to the other upgrades. Wall health plus increases your wall health by a certain amount. And then we have Orb Size, which is an interesting one since this is not actually a stat anywhere else. Increases the size of your orbs, which can actually be pretty helpful sometimes. The orbs do get really large if you get the high levels of it. But yeah, really interesting upgrade since it's not really seen anywhere else. And in the last section, we have the utility enhancements. Cash bonus plus just multiplies your cash bonus. I think it also does increase your cash a wave, similar to cash bonus. Next, we have coin bonus plus, which is a really good one because not only does it increase your tier bonus, it also increases your coins a kill. So this one kind of double dips, upgrades 2 different coin stats. And then we also have Cells a Kill bonus, which is kind of similar to Orb Size in the way that this is the only thing that increases your cell income. Yeah, there's no other like cell increasing upgrades in the game besides from this. But yeah, it just increases your Cells a Kill by an amount. Free Upgrades Plus multiplies all your free upgrades by a certain amount. And then Recovery Package Plus increases both your recovery amount and the max recovery by a certain amount. And then lastly, we have the Enemy Level Skip Plus, which just multiplies your enemy attack level skip and enemy health level skip by a certain amount. So yeah, that's all the upgrades in the workshop and the enhancements. I hope I explained them well enough. If you do have any questions about any of the upgrades in the workshop or the enhancements, or just any other general questions, you can go ahead and leave those in the comments. And yeah, see ya.